Welcome to Pacific States University's online lecture series for the undergraduate course titled Gen 108, Explorations in the Arts. Today we will cover the fascinating transition of Northern European art amidst profound societal upheaval. We're looking at a period right before the Renaissance fully takes hold, a time of incredible contrast where really intense darkness meets just astonishing artistic innovation.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the crises of the late Middle Ages, look at the rise of Gothic court culture, shift over to Flemish devotional painting, explore printmaking and German altarpieces, and wrap it all up with the medieval worldview. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Crises of the Late Middle Ages.
You see, to truly understand the art of this period, we've got to first look at the immense trauma that was basically unsettling the entire foundation of Europe. As art history students, you know we can never divorce the art from its historical context, and the late 14th and early 15th centuries were, frankly, a terrifying time to be alive. It was just compounding catastrophes. In the mid-14th century, you had the Black Death wiping out a massive percentage of the population. Then, the Hundred Years' War destabilizing nations and economies for, well, over a century. And if plague and endless war weren't enough, from 1378 to 1417, the Great Schism literally fractured the Catholic Church, with multiple popes claiming divine authority. All of this created a pervasive atmosphere of anxiety. People had this constant daily awareness of mortality, which led to a desperate, intense need for personal religious devotion.
Section 2. Rise of Gothic court culture.
Now, here's the irony. Out of all that immense darkness emerged the glittering, ultra-wealthy courts of Burgundy and Flanders. While the general population was suffering unimaginable hardships, the extreme concentration of wealth among the nobility sparked a period of incredibly lavish artistic patronage. A perfect example of this aristocratic escape is manuscript illumination. Texts created by artists like the famous Limburg brothers weren't just books to read, they were the ultimate status symbols. You get a sense of the aesthetic. Intricate hand-drawn decorations, incredibly vibrant, expensive colors, and just a lavish use of gold leaf. They depict this idealized, stylized world of courtly luxury that was safely insulated from the plague-ridden reality outside the castle walls.
Section 3. Flemish devotional painting.
But art rarely stays static, right? Especially during major cultural shifts. A monumental transformation happened when the artistic focus abruptly moved away from that highly stylized fairy tale luxury of court culture and grounded itself in precise physical observation of the world. We call the pioneers of this shift the Flemish masters. Think Robert Campin, Jan van Eyck, and Rogier van der Weyden. Their mastery of a relatively new medium, oil paint, brought forth an astonishing emerging realism. Oil paint was an absolute game-changer. It allowed for translucent layers or glazes, which meant they could create a depth of color and manipulate light in ways that were previously impossible. I mean, they were capturing the heavy texture of velvet, the cold gleam of brass, and raw human emotion with microscopic precision.
So let's compare these two side by side to clearly see the evolution. On one hand, Gothic elegance. This is all about stylized luxury, bright decorative colors, and aristocratic court culture. Basically, those illuminated manuscripts we just talked about. On the other hand, emerging realism. Championed by the Flemish masters, this focuses on precise observation, texture, light, and a very deep, visceral, personal devotion. It's a definitive, sharp pivot from the idealized to the incredibly tangible.
But here is the absolutely crucial point. This hyperrealism wasn't just for show. They weren't just trying to be modern for the sake of it. It was heavily layered with symbolism. The artistic practice of the time was to embed deep medieval religious meaning into meticulously painted, completely everyday objects. So, a perfectly rendered glass vase with light shining through it. That wasn't just a flex of the artist's technical skill. It specifically symbolized the Virgin Mary's purity. Every tiny, meticulously observed detail in the physical world served a much higher spiritual purpose.
Section 4. Printmaking and German altarpieces.
Now we've seen how detailed and devotional this art became, but those exquisite oil paintings were insanely expensive. They were usually reserved for wealthy merchants and nobility. So how does this visual revolution actually impact the everyday person? We can track the democratization of this art in 3 distinct steps. First, that Flemish stylistic realism, with all its heavy emotion and grounded detail, spreads eastward into German territories. Second, early printmaking technologies emerge. This is massive. It means highly detailed devotional images can suddenly be reproduced and distributed cheaply. And finally, step 3, we see this culminate in mass-produced German altarpieces. By combining sculpture, painted panels, and printmaking influences, profound religious art and the intense emotional connection that came with it was brought directly to the wider masses, right in their local parish churches.
Section 5. The Medieval Worldview.
Okay, let's synthesize everything we've looked at today. Observing all of these incredible technological and artistic advancements brings us to a really critical question, one you have to ask yourself as students of art history. With all this stunning realism, the groundbreaking development of oil paints, and the democratizing power of printmaking, were they finally breaking free from medieval thought and stepping boldly into the modern age?
Well, the ultimate paradox of this lecture is captured right here, and this is the main takeaway I want you to leave with today. Artists increasingly observed the real world with extraordinary precision, but Europe was still fundamentally medieval in its values and worldview. They used these groundbreaking, intensely realistic techniques not to celebrate the secular human experience, like the High Renaissance would do later on, but to actually intensify traditional medieval religious devotion. The methods were entirely revolutionary, but the soul remained entirely medieval. It makes you wonder, in our own era of rapid technological advancement, are we actually changing our core values, or are we just finding sharper, newer ways to express the old ones? Thank you for joining me for this session of Gen 108. Review these slides, study the concepts carefully, and I'll see you in our next lecture.